Good morning, and welcome to this Labor Day Sunday special of the Eclectic Radical. I'm Chris Richards, the Eclectic Radical, as always, and it's my pleasure to introduce candidate for President of the United Auto Workers, Will Lehman. Will, please introduce yourself and tell the audience a bit about yourself.
I'm Will Lehman, and I work at Mack Trucks in Macungie, Pennsylvania. I've been there for 5 years. And I'm running for, as he just said, the international presidency of the UAW. And I'm running on a platform to abolish the bureaucracy of the UAW. And we can get into that in a little bit.
Sounds good. I am thinking that is exactly what we need. I know that Mack had a big strike not terribly long ago.
Yeah, 2019. First time in 30 some years. There are a lot of different opinions about how the strike was carried out, and a lot of essentially negative feelings about how the strike was carried out. $275 a week at that time for strike pay, and it didn't really seem like they were getting anything done that we wanted, and it just kind of was disenfranchised workers from that kind of fight. But it was authorized, though, 79% ahead of time. People authorized the strike. They wanted to fight, but the reality is that fight got misled.
Yeah, I remember reading a lot about that. The previous contract had been bad, and it had a bunch of concessions. And the new contract didn't undo any of the concessions from the last contract, which I had thought had been the whole point of the strike.
Well, there was a lot of things that people wanted done. I mean, me personally, I wanted the abolition of tiers. We have tiers at Mack Trucks. It's a little different than the TPT type status, where you can be on there with indefinitely. It's more broken up into years, but it's gotten consistently worse. The tier system is terrible, and that's one of the things I'm running to abolish as well. Other candidates say they want to abolish it, but again, it's what kind of fight are you going to lead to do that? And I'm proposing an international fight to abolish the tiers. It's workers everywhere have to be united on these things in order to fight the companies appropriately. Volvo is a multinational company, and we need a worldwide fight if we're going to successfully win.
Well, that's true. They have workers everywhere. I mean, if you can move a factory from is it Sweden? Yeah, from Sweden to the U.S. to Mexico to China as you need to in order to better your corporate interests, then
Right.
Workers in all those places need to be in solidarity with each other to better their interests as workers. I completely agree with that. You have to be able to coordinate strikes internationally these days.
And that's one of the UAW's major flaws. It's its nationalistic approach to these kinds of fights. It tries to wind workers up, trying to promote, America first and made in USA. When the reality is all these cars are made of global components by workers internationally, and we've got to recognize that we're all in that same fight. And that's part of what I'm running on too, is building that class consciousness. Win or lose, I want workers to realize that we're all on the same side, the working class. And our enemy, the one who's trying to sell us out, get us to fight each other, is the ruling class. It's Volvo, it's Ford. Ford is doing the same thing right now. Saarlouis, Germany, they're shutting down a Ford plant by 2025. Workers there have said possibly sooner. And they did that by pitting workers in IG Metal against workers in Ford in Spain, in Valencia, who's under UGT. They basically said, we're going to be making electric cars. We're not going to need as many workers. Both of those trade unions give us your most competitive offer. So again, it's a race to the bottom for the workers. And I'm proposing something entirely different, where we can say, we'll not only shut down Ford in Spain if you shut down Ford in Germany, we'll shut down Ford in America too, and you won't make $1 of profit unless you keep us, the working class, safe. So, it's not about pitting workers against each other. It's about international solidarity.
This brings up an important point. I don't like to talk about social media too much on the show, but this is actually something that I think is indicative of some of the nationalism and also sectarianism in the labor movement. I was blocked by the leader of the auxiliary for the Warrior Met mine strike because I was saying very aggressively, you need to strike across multiple sites. And she was very angry at it. It's illegal. It's illegal. And I seem to remember that there was a time when just striking was illegal and unions did it anyway.
Yeah. And that too, what I try to tell every worker I come across is, that's your labor power is your commodity that you're selling to these companies. And it should be, it really is your right to withhold it at any time. And any bureaucracy that prevents you from doing that is not your friend, whether it's the, Warrior Met or whether it's the UAW or CEA or the NEA for the teachers that I was talking to in Columbus. I basically went to that strike and I was telling those teachers that if I had my way, all 372,000 active UAW members would be shutting the automakers down and coming to your strike and backing your fight. And there were some picket captains there that didn't even want me talking to the teachers. And, it's that blocking of that worker solidarity that these trade unions are really promoting. And it's the bureaucracies of them. It's not the workers. Workers love when they have support from the outside, from other workers, even, workers internationally. Like last year with NRV's strike, workers in Ghent, Belgium walked out, wildcatted over basically an increase in time to their work week. And, that's something that we've got to recognize. We're all together in these things, and it's growing. And I'm trying to do my best to help promote that class consciousness from where I can. But go ahead.
I did see that the negotiators of that awful contract with Mac did lose their jobs in their local.
Well, yeah, they lost them in their local, but one was promoted to international and the other retired. And the funny thing about the one that was promoted to international is he had 20 some years in a Mac, could have had a very nice spot, pretty much any spot he wanted on the floor. But he got promoted instead. And again, that's the bureaucracy I'm referring to. Workers recognized that this wasn't someone that was working in their best interests. Some workers backed him, but for the majority that voted him out, that's a sign that you need to come back to the floor, and maybe, be around the workers that decided that you weren't the best fit. And really, any of these types of reps should have been able to be recalled at any time. Any kind of leadership position shouldn't be a number of years that you're guaranteed. It should be recalled at any time if it's going to be in a representative capacity.
And this is just my opinion. I'm very interested in your opinion. But if you're serious about democracy, whether you're talking about workers' democracy or public democracy, anything that you're supposed to be ruled by the people, then if somebody loses an election, isn't it kind of anti-democratic to give him an administrative position that's essentially a promotion after he's been rejected by workers at his own local?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how this bureaucracy operates, though. This was someone that walked hand in hand with Biden when he came to Mac last year, and the company executive, I forget what his name is at the moment, Martin Weisberg, I believe it is, president of Mac right now.
Yes.
They're all interchangeable, and anyway, they're all walking happy hand in hand and promoting nationalism, promoting Made in USA, and same thing with this microchip shortage, trying to scapegoat the Chinese over microchips when that's the reality of global production. Go ahead.
No, this just brings the joke of that, of course, is even as they pay lip service to economic nationalism in order to get the workers to support their microchip legislation. We had Nancy Pelosi risk an international conflict with China to go to Taiwan to make sure that people in Taiwan knew that their factories weren't being cut out just because the U.S. wanted to boost domestic production.
Right, and that's the U.S. trying to assert their interests internationally, just like with Russia, just like with sending all these arms to Ukraine. It provoked Russia into attacking, and what I try to tell workers everywhere as well is, we have no problem with any Russian worker, with any Ukrainian worker, or any Chinese worker. So why are these people at the top starting these wars? Why are they funding these wars? Billions for armaments for Ukraine, and nothing for the people back home. Austerity for the working class.
I said exactly the same thing yesterday, and a couple of days again before that. Billions for the Ukraine and cops, and nothing for the homeless.
Right. Yep. And same thing. I mean, the police problem is, one thing that really struck me is when I visited Michigan and looking at that memorial for the Ford hunger marchers. They're marching for the same things that we have problems with today, and the police, same way as today, were against them. And I tell guys I work with, those were your grandparents, that type anyway, the auto worker type. They were marching against the police and the state essentially, and Ford. Ford didn't do anything.
You can make lots of criticisms of the UAW over the years. You can make lots of good criticisms of Walter Reuther. But Walter Reuther got shot because he was one of the last union leaders who still understood that the cops were not the workers' friends. He got shot for being in solidarity with black workers demanding their rights in places where they were treated very discriminatorily because they were black workers and not white workers. He wanted all workers to have the same rights. He got shot. And
go ahead.
I'm not trying to scare you or terrify you, but I mean, let's say you win. Are you prepared to take that kind of risk if that's what it takes?
Well, yeah. I mean, I resolved to take that kind of risk just running. I mean, I'm sure the UAW is hostile to me, and I'm sure that, the government is not going to be a fan of the things I'm saying to workers. So I've already resolved to take that risk. It's not something I enjoy, but, it's about standing up for what's right. And if we don't do it, what's society going to turn into if we don't start standing up? To me, it's a question of socialism or barbarism. We're heading for one or the other, and I'm trying to do my best to bring about socialism. So,
I would argue, this is a comment from Gira Brown in the chat, utopia for the rich, dystopia for the rest.
Yep.
I would argue that's where we already are. I mean, we talk about socialism or barbarism. It's barbarism now. It's not just that we're sliding into worse barbarism, which we are, but we are living under barbaric conditions now, under a barbaric liberal state that has no regard for human rights, even as it pays lip service to their inalienability.
Yeah, and they're opening, the door for it to be much worse. Naturally, with this aggression against China and Russia, they're the two nuclear powers. I don't know, they've lost their minds essentially. I don't know how to put it any other kind of way. I know they have their own fallout shelters, but we don't. And the reality is, we don't. Like I said, we don't have any backing in that fight in the working class. We're not interested in that fight. We're interested in making a decent living, raising a family. And basically looking out for, having a decent retirement as well. And the UAW criminally neglects retirees. And those are the things we got to be focusing on. That's the society we've got to be building towards, not allowing ourselves to get swept up in any kind of war, with any of these other countries, because certainly not in my interest. I mean, I just have to keep reiterating that.
I'm glad you mentioned retirees, because during the COVID pandemic, and which is still going on and people don't like to talk about it, there has been a lot of casual disregard for the lives of retirees and disabled people who are not as safe as the government and the business establishment want to say that the general population is. You hear people talking about, well, healthy people don't have anything to worry about if they get COVID. Young people don't have anything to worry about if they get COVID. And then the question comes up, what about people who aren't healthy and young? Your politicians talk about the dignity of work. Doesn't every worker deserve a dignified retirement? Doesn't every worker who becomes disabled deserve a dignified life?
Yeah, and they absolutely do. And I remember that talk about, only if you have so many comorbidities. So what, that person is not worthy of a life because they have a comorbidity? I mean, I had a coworker die that, well, I'll start from the beginning with it. There's a coworker I knew that loaded engines on the engine line in Mac. And basically they forced him into work on a down week, and he caught COVID, and he went out, was on a ventilator. And the only way we knew any of this was because his niece was texting a coworker of ours, and he went into a coma, couldn't be resuscitated. He was 61 years old, and he had a couple minor health issues, and he also didn't have the vaccine, but that doesn't really matter to me. I mean, and I'm sure it doesn't matter to him that he was treated less just for not, and he was misled by, propaganda from Trump. And, but ultimately it came down to costing him his life. And to me, whether workers have different ideas about things, it's where those ideas came from, the top down. And he lost his life over something that was our leadership was promoting, so the enemy there is the people promoting those ideas from the top. And, with the comorbidities as well. Yeah, those people absolutely don't deserve to die. We should have taken China's stance. I'm not going to really promote anything of any national government, but their stance with zero COVID. If everyone would have done that, we would have been over COVID by now and back to normalcy.
We could have stopped the pandemic with, I think somebody said, a 6-week global shutdown. There would have been less economic pain than with all the stops and starts of necessary shutdowns during outbreaks instead. It also, the pandemic would have been over faster. People would be safe. Yeah, it just makes sense that it doesn't make sense that they did what they did. Except it does.
Right.
And this is absolutely correct. Elites chose eugenics for the old and disabled. They see people who are retired or disabled, like Commie Squid is saying, useless eaters who aren't doing their bit to help society.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There is a movement afoot, and this movement operates along very similar lines in multiple places. It serves the direct interests of capitalism. But there is a movement afoot that it's linked to environmentalism, to anti-immigrationism, not the good sides of environmentalism. Obviously, we need to do something about climate crisis, but population control is never that, and eugenics is never going to solve the climate crisis.
Right.
You see this. Don't do anything about the environment except conservation that eliminates, that takes native people out of their homes and puts them somewhere else. Don't do anything about immigration except to shut down the borders and keep people in dangerous places. Don't do anything about crime except to put more cops on the street and enforce the carceral state more firmly. Don't do anything about the economy except to help the landlord and the boss at the expense of the public.
No, I agree. And I mean, to circle back around to the COVID again, the UAW did nothing about COVID in the factories. I mean, especially at our factory, it did, piecemeal things to put on an appearance of they're doing something about COVID. And really, it was only because, workers were very militant in the beginning about it, before all that top-down propaganda was hitting everybody. Everybody viewed it as a concern in the very beginning. It took that propaganda to take that away. And the UAW absolutely could have been a leader, but it wasn't in their interest. It was in their interest to keep the companies happy and keep the companies profiting, because their profit is tied to, as they see it, the companies. Whereas
it's that liberal thinking where the health of the industry matters for both the bosses and the workers. And well, maybe, I mean, in the sense that people have to be able to afford cars for the workers to have work and get paid, sure. But that doesn't mean that it's the state's job to keep an industry strong in an economy ruled by maximizing profits for shareholders.
Right. And that too, what would all the workers say? What the democratic outcome of the situation have been if all the workers did have a say? Should we shut down? Are new cars essential? The vast majority of workers working in these auto plants can't afford the new cars they're producing now. So I'm pretty sure they don't care about those new cars being produced so much as they care about their life. And the UAW has assets, chose not to wage any kind of fight against, leading workers back into the factories and risking life for profit, but that's not in their interest. And what I'm trying to advance too is all these safety issues, we can't ignore them, and workers know what's right involving these safety issues. So we've got to be the ones to make democratic decisions about that, using the rank and file committees, shutting things down when it's not safe. That's up to us, it's our lives that are on the line. So those decisions need to be up to us.
I absolutely agree. This is actually a fairly good question because I know the UAW is in both the US and Canada. Terry Stack, who is from Canada, asks, Will, are you planning on visiting UAW workers in Canada?
Well, unfortunately, it's a matter of time, and I do have a regular job. I burned pretty much all my time visiting work, going to the Detroit back when we had our shutdown. That's where I used my first vacation for. And this past down week that I had, I tried to visit as many plants as I can. So if the time allows, probably, but it probably won't. So I'm probably going to have to be virtually holding meetings with workers in these other areas. There's UAW members in Puerto Rico as well, and they're criminally overlooked. But it's not only about UAW either. I'm trying to visit as many workers everywhere that I can. Wherever a fight's breaking out, I'm going to try to get there if I'm able to. But again, if you're in the UAW in Canada or someone that is, I'd love to speak to them, and they can contact my campaign, and I'd love to set up calls with workers, wherever they are. And even if it's not auto work industry, I try to make time for whoever is, trying to see this in a rank and file type manner. Whoever is, recognizing that we're all the working class, I'm trying to talk to.
This actually raises another good question, because I thought of this while you were answering that. What does it say about both our union democracy and our public democracy that it's so hard for people who are actually working to actually do any sort of electioneering for president of the union or Congress or anything they might choose to run for in order to participate more actively in our democracy, whether at work or in the public sphere?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely by design. There are some Jeep workers in Toledo that they were working 7-10-hour days. They certainly would not be able to. And I was speaking with one that was there for 5 years, and he's a TPT, topped out at $19 an hour, and they were working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and he's got a family that he's trying to support. So it would be absolutely impossible for this person to do so if he saw the same things and had the same mindset as me. Our conditions are different, and we need that material equality. So he would be able to do that if he were to choose to, but we don't have that now. And yeah, it is definitely anti-democratic, and it's by design. It's squeezing the last cent out of every worker that they can, and even the last second. I was talking with another worker at Venture in Evar, Michigan. Her father worked in the Pontiac plant, the one where they made Fieros, and he basically died when he was 65, made a very good living for himself and his family, but on his deathbed, he told her that he regrets all the time, the overtime he worked, all the time he worked, when he could have been spending that with his family. And, that's originally unions were supposed to be 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. And you had enough pay to sustain yourself off that. It's not supposed to be this, like you said, anti-democratic nature.
No, I totally agree. Here's a good question, too. Obi Strayhorn asks, where do I send donations to your campaign?
I appreciate it. For one, Will for UAWpresident.org. It's Will, FOR, UAW, president.org. And I have a donation thing on there. And I appreciate any donations I can get. I often don't think about asking, but, it does help.
I totally get it. I don't ask people to join my Patreon and pay for the show as often as I should either. So I totally understand. I would rather. So folks, remember, if you can afford it, first, contribute to your local mutual aid. Second, donate to Will's campaign if you can. And third, if you still have something left and you can't afford it, consider supporting the show. I want to say I think it is by design that they limit worker participation in public life. I don't have as much experience on the union side of things because I work in a white collar working class job where people pretend that you're an office worker and not a worker, and that there's some difference between office workers and factory workers, and that we shouldn't be unionized because we have it so good, which is far from the truth. I have fairly fortunate working circumstances myself, but I don't make the money I should for what I'm doing. My coworkers don't make the money they should for what they're doing. Neither do the techs in the field who we support. Neither do the electricians in many cases in the field that we support, especially if they're apprentices or journeymen.
Yeah, no, pretty much. Yeah, that's universal. Anyone in the working class knows they're in the working class because they're not making what they should. Someone's profiting off of them, and I'm sure that CEO of Volvo, for example, is making over $57 million a year doing nothing. I mean, you can't justify that kind of inequality.
Playing golf and making public appearances and going to board meetings where he just tells the board what everybody's telling him, whether it's true or not.
Right.
And I think, and I may even actually be overestimating the amount of work they do, but it really feels like CEOs have that 16-hour work week for 40 hours pay that the international workers of the world have been fighting for years now.
Oh, I'm certain. I think it probably is an overestimation, like you said. At least even if they are working 16 hours a day, I can't imagine what that, whatever, a week. Yeah. I can't imagine what that work would even entail.
Well, we know the joke. We know the joke that the media always used to make. They reported it seriously, but it was always a joke to me about Elon Musk going into the factory and working 16-hour days at Tesla. So Elon Musk is not a line worker. He's not a technician. He's not a software engineer or programmer. There is nothing that him being at the office can accomplish for 16 hours except to make everybody at the factory stay there for 16 hours because he's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing the picture of him sleeping on the line or something like that.
Yes.
That's sleeping. That's not working.
Exactly.
You can't do that. But yeah, he's just a money man. He didn't even come up with the idea for Tesla.
He bought Tesla.
Right. Yeah, he's just money. And that money was off the exploitation of workers in Africa from his family.
Yes, so. and from his, because it's important, it's not just important to talk about how little billionaires work. It's also important to talk about how incompetent billionaires are. Elon Musk became rich enough to buy Tesla by almost ruining PayPal and being thrown out of the company, but they had to buy his stock because he was the majority owner.
Yeah, the whole capitalist system is madness. And
so he failed up from PayPal to Tesla and is now the richest man in the world.
Yep.
That's disgusting.
No, I know. I've heard it before. The point made that if hard work got you pay, then day laborers would be billionaires.
Yes.
And he's certainly not. But yeah, that's the system we're under. The system
There's an old cartoon. There was an old comic strip called Life with Father, which was about this guy from the Boondocks who won the lottery. And he goes back to his hometown and he's talking to a miner with a pickaxe. And he says, "Hard work got me where I am today." And the miner with the pickaxe is thinking to himself, "Yeah, but whose?"
Yeah, exactly. And, workers, that's a big part of what I'm trying to promote too, is that idea, that working class consciousness, and whose, like you said, labor is that produced off of, and what share should you be getting out of it, and how do we distribute it? Same thing with even in the auto workplaces, it's wholly and equally distributed. Ventra Auto Parts work manufacturers. They're a subsidiary of Flex and Gate, and they're owned by Shahid Khan, who's a billionaire that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know the Jaguars are terrible, but he owns a football team while workers in Ventra are making $14 an hour. That's inequality.
And you've got this system by which, when you have these multiple corporate levels, that means each corporate level is taking a chunk out of the corporate level beneath it, which means there's that much less for the actual people doing work at each corporate level.
Yeah.
The top, that chunk, that at the top, that chunk is going straight to shareholder profits, and even at the highest level, there's far less for the workers because it's all coming out. It's all coming out of the corporation and being given to investors because they own the capital. They own the company. They own the means of production. They're the ones who are supposed to be making money according to the capitalist system.
Right, and they're in the like the trade unions are in the pocket of all these people. And, I see lots of promotion for trade unions. The reality is that's just trying to get that labor police force over on the workers. That's what I've come to see, is that's all these trade unions are, a labor police force. And while I do approve of workers' organizations, that's what I'm trying to build with promoting the International Workers Alliance of Rank and File Committees, it's not about fealty to a trade union that's not doing anything for you. It's about a workers' organization that functions in the workers' interests. So it's not just about saying, I'm a proud union member. It's about, is that workers' organization representing you accurately? Do you have a democratic say in it, like we were discussing? Or not?
This brings up one of my favorite anecdotes here, because it's such a big win for labor in the Portland area, but it's so humiliating for the organized labor establishment. So we have a local fast food franchise here called Burgerville. In Los Angeles, it would be Fat Burger. In different cities of the world, it would be some different local franchise. Where I grew up in Southern California, just outside of LA, it was a little chain called The Hat. But it's all the same thing. It's that local gentry-run, local fast food place whose owners aren't billionaires, but they're really successful millionaires, and they have a big chunk of the local market. They're important locally. They make money. They support both major parties so that they can get their way no matter who wins the elections. They got unionized. The Burgerville got unionized, and it wasn't by any AFL organization. It wasn't by the SEIU. It wasn't by the folks leading the folks doing the Starbucks unionizing right now, or Amazon. It was the international workers of the world. Burgerville was unionized by Wobblies. So as a result, they have a union organization that is absolutely committed to supporting them as opposed to expecting them to support it. And it's really been making a huge difference around here. And I just love to see it. And I hope that we can see more success like that, both with rank and file committees within the organized labor force, and with more outside unions like the IWW succeeding in places like Burgerville.
Well, yeah, I understand that. I mean, it is about workers recognizing, that having that international class consciousness. I'm not too familiar with the Burgerville one. I'll have to read up on that. But, it's something that, I know workers, even when they do try to unionize under these other unions, they're trying to make a way for themselves to have something better. And typically that's routed into your traditional trade unions. I know the Amazon labor union, but it doesn't have that international perspective,
True.
and a lot of times it's just, they're just trying to get dues off them. I know, like with the UAW, they've tried to organize in other countries, and a lot of those workers reject them for all the UAW's faults. Same thing in the South. They can't organize in the South. But people do recognize the faults of some of these trade unions, and that's why they fail. And, the IWA RFC isn't about paying dues to it or anything. It's about class consciousness and forming an organization to fight and recognizing that class consciousness worldwide, So, I mean, I do respect that.
Here's a question from the room. Will, why did you go to Columbus, Ohio?
To speak with teachers there. They were on strike in Columbus. I think I touched on it a little earlier. Yeah. And I wanted to, show that working class solidarity to them. And also I wanted to let them know that, in my opinion, every UAW worker should be out backing them as well. I called for UAW members to back their fight. And, with that too, they were basically, some of them were deterred from talking to me by their own strike captains, the picket captains. They don't want, someone basically, they called me a union buster when I went there. And, while I do say bad things about the bureaucracies of the unions, I'm trying to build working class solidarity worldwide. So it's a little bit bigger than, what they might be used to. And I do want to point out too that the NEA is the parent of the CEA that represents Columbus teachers. And they have, I believe it was around 3 million members. They pay dues to these people and they don't get any strike pay. None whatsoever, they told me. And I just couldn't believe that. It's like, what are you even paying dues for then? If you're not going to have an organization that financially backs you, why are you financially backing it? But anyway.
No, I have to agree. And I mean, this is why the major labor organizations not even labor organizations, but the major organizations that I support are the International Workers of the World and the Socialist Equality Party, because they are international. They are focused on international worker class solidarity, and they're not about bureaucracy. And that's what I want to see in the labor movement.
Right. And that's what I want to see too. And that's why I'm willing to risk, what I am risking to bring that about.
Here's another question. What made you start a rank and file committee in your plant?
So, like we were speaking about a little earlier, that New River Valley Volvo strike last year, they paint the cabs that come up to our plant. They're a Volvo company. They make Volvo big trucks. And, just like we make Mack trucks. And like I said, they paint the cabs down there. And when they were out on strike, they were having scabs paint the cabs down there. And the UAW naturally did nothing to fight that. And they had us handling those scab cabs and Mack trucks. Also, the strike pay they were getting was $275 a week. And they were fighting like hell down there. They rejected 3 different contracts and then were forced to revote on that third one. It was the company's last, best, and final offer. And when companies try to push workers around like that, you have to grow that fight. And that's what Volvo workers were calling us at Mack to do, was to join them. And the UAW is wholly uninterested in doing that. So we formed. It wasn't only me that formed a rank and file committee at Mack. It was a number of us that saw what was going on down there as disgusting, that they were trying to make us be a part of the scabbing effort. So we formed a committee at Mack, and we were trying to shut Mack down because, we're not supposed to be handling these scab cabs. We're not supposed to be promoting the scabbing of our brothers down and sisters down at NRV. So that's what made us form a committee. But like I want to stress, it wasn't just me. There was more workers that saw the value in that as well, that, knew that we should have that solidarity with them.
That's why it's a committee.
Right.
And not just one person. No, I get that. And that's good to mention, because it's about solidarity, and the more of us have that solidarity, the more that strength grows, and the more we can actually do with it, and the more that we can actually win, instead of watching negotiators say, well, this is their last, best, and final offer. And then, well, it's the same as their last offer. Yes, but it's their last, best, and final offer. Well, then no.
Right. And that's a big point of the rank and file committees too, is, having the power to shut down, if Volvo wants to mess with them down there, rank and file committees in every Volvo plant, like I said, would shut them down. You're not going to make $1 unless you bargain with our brothers and sisters down there, in good faith. And they weren't bargaining in good faith. I know one of the members down there filed a complaint with the NLRB over bad faith, bargaining. Well, where'd that go? The state is aligned with these corporations. It's not going to be in any back any kind of workers. And that's what we got to recognize as a problem too, and that's what we have to resolve. And like I said, that is the appeal for socialism. That is the appeal for a socialist state, a worker state, not just trying to go through all these routes that don't work. It's just a, way to dead end a struggle.
And as long as there are ways to dead end that struggle and to stop people from being able to keep fighting, the boss keeps winning.
Right.
And if we want to win, we have to stop allowing ourselves to be limited by the arbitrary framework that the liberal union system says we have to stay within. You have to break the law sometimes. That's the reason that unions were put together, because the law is not on workers' side. The law is not on the side of the worker, it's on the side of the boss. The law is not on the side of the tenant, it's on the side of the landlord. The law is not on the side of the public, it's on the side of the capital aggregators on Wall Street who invest billionaire money and make billionaires richer.
Right. And two, even just, I try to promote the idea, with workers running things. I tell workers, we could run this company better than they do. And there has not been one worker that's disagreed with me yet. And, I was talking with a UAW retiree yesterday, and he made the comment, the company doesn't run the company. It just does things. And I don't know a better way to phrase that, and that's why they keep having all these shutdowns for, part shortages and things like that. It's not running, it's appropriately. It's not a planned economy. It's not, doing anything with any kind of logic. It's just trying to make as much profit as it can right now. It doesn't understand any kind of further thinking.
That's its moral responsibility. And you have to, and this is why people have to understand a little bit of theory. I hate to say it. I know that some people get a little upset at the idea of theory, but you have to understand how capitalism works. You have to understand that capitalism is an extractive process. Workers make things, capitalists take things. When we make something, it is taken from us and sold to someone else, and then we are paid a fraction, a tiny fraction that gets smaller all the time in terms of real money of what that value that was created really is.
Oh, I agree. And kind of a funny thing, I talk about, everything socialist I can with workers that I work with. And one older worker the other day made the comment to me that he's like, Marx was a bastard though, right? And I said, who told you that, for one? And, I've been sending different workers, just texting them from Marxist.org, Wage, Labor, and Capital, and asking them, what do you disagree with in what he's writing here? Let me know what he's writing that you think he's a bastard about, because I guarantee you that came from capitalists, that notion that he's a bad guy.
Well, so the best example I can always think of is Cuba. Lots of people talk about horribly repressive Cuba was under Castro, but most of the people doing that complaining are angry because Castro took their slaves away. And again, you can criticize communism in one country in many ways, and I have, but the people in Miami who hate Castro don't hate Castro because he was an evil dictator who repressed the people. The people in Miami hate Castro because he took their parents' or grandparents' slaves away. The repression under Batista was horrific in terms of violence against the labor force. They might as well have still been legally slaves.
Well, I do. I don't subscribe to that, socialism in one country, like you were talking about. I do consider myself a Trotskyist,
Yes.
and that there were a lot of failings with a lot of these states that claim to be socialist or communist.
Yes.
And it did kind of confuse. Well, it definitely confused workers as to what socialism really is,
Yes.
or what communism really is. Like Stalin with the Great Terror killed more communists than Hitler, and same thing with the Stalin-Hitler pact. And that's why there is a lot of confusion about what socialism is. And I try to when I do talk with anybody, it's about getting back to the theory. What was written, and like what did Trotsky write about the whole situation? The revolution betrayed. There were socialists that were calling out these negative things, and they were silenced. And that part of history needs to be looked at. So,
no, and I think that it's really important to understand that. I mean, and I've always said this. I will defend Stalin to the death against fake Nazi propaganda, and I will criticize him to the death for all the things he really did.
I understand. I just
no, I know exactly what you mean, because I mean, he in Spain, yes, the Popular Front won the elections, but it also led to the death of Trotskyists and anarchists who were opposed to selling out workers in Catalonia. It led to the deaths of Trotskyists all over the world when they opposed the Hitler-Stalin Pact. I understand, and you can say it's fair to say that he spent years fruitlessly, and the fruitless part is important to understand. But he spent years fruitlessly trying to get an agreement with the capitalist West for collective security against fascism. And the capitalist West just wanted to make Hitler invade Russia faster. Everything that they did was designed to get Hitler to invade Russia faster instead of moving west. And at some point, what was Stalin supposed to do? At the same time, it had horrific consequences as far as the actual struggle against capitalism and fascism. And I think sometimes historical forces are so much more important than individuals. And while and that's one of the things that Marx really got right, is that there are situations where the context of history is really coloring the decisions people make. And if anything, the big challenge is how to make the right decisions at the right time to change the context of history, which is the real hard part.
Well, that's, what I'm trying to do now is make the right decision with, this run and get workers on the side of socialism. That's the whole point of, really trying to, while looking at history, look at the entire context of it. And like I said, what Trotsky wrote about what was going on in Russia, and also, just kind of spread that message now of international worker solidarity.
Yes.
And, getting back to that. But so I'm trying to do everything at this point in history I can. But like was said earlier, it's up to every worker. It's not just going to be me alone. I'm not, some kind of magician. I can't just magically, especially working within the bureaucracy, those changes are not going to happen by one man alone or one person alone.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, obviously the liberal public, the liberal state and the union and union governance are not identical. And obviously Joe Biden didn't want any real change anyway. But look at how the structures of the liberal state are set up to allow Joe Biden to throw up his hands and say, well, I tried and this is the best we can do.
Right. Yeah. And he failed a lot. As far as Joe Biden goes, he failed a lot of people that thought he was going to change anything. Students with, the debt that he was supposed to be forgiving. I remember I forget what the original figure was. Like it started out, he was going to forgive all their debt or something like that. Then it kept going down in a dollar amount. And, or even with COVID, he said he was going to stop COVID at one point. And there's 600 some thousand dead under his presidency. He didn't stop anything. So, and that's because he's in the interest of the capitalist state. Again, he's in the interest of keeping those corporations profiting. It's not in the interest of, and also making China look like, the bad guy with, every time they shut down, they act like.
Oops. So there was a mistake here. Sorry.
That's all right.
This was
every time.
The UAW is not representing the workers. So then with the typo correction in mind, what is your program to fight for what workers need? Which I think is a good actual place for me to ask for you to deliver that as sort of your final thought. And then for us to wrap up. I've kept you longer than planned already.
Well, my program is an appeal to the workers, not an appeal to the bureaucracy, not an appeal to bureaucratic change. The bureaucracy needs to be abolished, and the ones who are going to do that are the workers. That's why I'm calling for rank and file committees to be built on every floor, not only in the auto worker areas, not only in an auto worker section, but internationally. I'm in talks with workers internationally. I've talked with workers in Germany, workers in India, in Chennai, that had their Ford plant shut down. It's about reaching out to workers internationally, having rank and file committees, and workers controlling, the situation going forward democratically. So I think I'm getting a little reverberation. Anyway, my program is building those committees on every floor. It's not just an appeal to bureaucratic change. That's the only way we're going to have things done, is when workers everywhere start organizing, under the alliance of, the International Workers Alliance and rank and file committees, and we start communicating with each other. That's one major thing that we don't do now, and we need to start. So we need to form our own organization, begin communicating with each other, educate ourselves, looking at history, and reading even theory. And I think that's the way forward for us, is getting a real understanding of what kind of fight can win and acting on that in rank and file committees.
And I think that's the right message right now. I think we need to be talking to people around the world. We have technology that lets us do that. It's one of the few things we have energy for some days after work. It's the sort of thing that we absolutely can do. We can talk to other working people around the world. We can talk to them about forming rank and file committees in their workplaces. We can coordinate with them about what to actually do about international labor issues. These are things we absolutely need to be considering, and that's why I support Will Lehman for UAW president, and why I had him on the show, and why I think everybody could do worse than to support organizations like the SEP and the IWW that are working for workers internationally, and really working for workers and not just working for the industry or the best national interest, because these are all things that confuse people and get them to make sacrifices that the boss and the landlord are not being asked to make. On that note, thanks, Will, for joining me. I really appreciate it today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you very much to everybody in the audience for your comments and for your questions and for watching. And everybody, please share this, whether you're liking it up on YouTube, whether you're sharing it on Twitter, whether you're posting it to your Facebook page. Please share this. It's important as many people hear what Will has to say as possible. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great Sunday and a happy Labor Day tomorrow.
Thank you.